how can I give my life completely to great love for the benefit of all beings?
I am nothing, but then I am also
Mhm.
everything. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. This is the second episode now, and I'm speaking now with Chase. Chase is someone who I met in Vietnam. He was running a meditation group on Facebook, and we ended up connecting on a lot more deeper level, though, because I ended up participating a lot more in the weekly meetups, and we've also done some small retreats together that went for about 3 to 5 hours. And I found those retreats very rewarding. And I found Chase to be a very inspirational figure who helped guide me and motivate me in a lot of ways to push myself. His opinions and thoughts on meditation, I thought, were unlike anyone I've ever met. So, Chase, why don't you share a
Oh,
little bit about yourself, where you come from, and maybe about some of your experiences or maybe why you started a meditation community?
sure. Yeah. Thanks for that introduction, David.
Yeah, no worries.
You definitely, were a key part of our little community's success. You're a co-creator because the more people who take it seriously, the more people who take it seriously. So we had a good, collective energy going on there. It was a lot of fun. So let's see what's good from my background. Well, I'm from America and I live in Vietnam now, and I'm a school teacher. I teach at international schools, which is a job that I'm really loving for a lot of reasons. Maybe we'll talk about education and how important that is. And I'm also, a meditation geek, I would say. I'm not not a super old guy, so I haven't been practicing for decades and decades, but just how people get geeky in certain topics. I got into meditation when I was in university, and I think as a young guy, it's a good thing to get obsessed with. There's a lot of worse things to get obsessed with. A good thing to pour your ambition into. Probably one of the best things to pour your ambition into, actually. So that's been wonderful. It's been like the biggest blessing of my life is to get into that.
What does it really mean to be a meditator? Like a lot of people see meditation as this, I guess, like escape in some ways, because it's really hard for people to detach themselves totally from their thoughts and see the benefits of meditation or even see the idea of meditation working for them. So when
Mm.
you break down the groundwork, I guess in like the simplest terms you could, how would you try and explain like what the life of a meditator is? Like how does your life change, and um,
Yeah.
what is it about meditation that helps you, I know, instill a sense of purpose in yourself and your job?
Mm. Those are great questions. The first one maybe is really easy, actually. Probably the easiest question that we'll have tonight is like a meditator is someone who meditates every day. And, there's a lot of people who are interested in meditation who maybe wouldn't be considered a meditator by that definition. So there's really a lot to be said for just doing it every day and waiting a year or waiting 5 years and just seeing where that takes you. I'm not someone who's done really long retreats. A lot of people do the 10-day retreats. I would love to. It's just not part of life circumstances right now.
Hmm.
But I've done the practice every day for a good while. And that seems to have been really powerful. In terms of, what it does, it's hard to differentiate between growing up and meditation. In some ways, they're super related. So I'm just turned 28 and I've been meditating probably since I was 21 and
Hmm.
even more consistently, maybe for the past 4 or 5 years. And so, that your brain isn't really fully developed until, well, never, we could say, but we know that there's still developmental changes happening through the 20s for sure. 21-year-old guys are not super mature.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's
Well, you
it's
remember
hard to
ones.
pick those apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say if I had to put it down to something, there's the different elements. There's an accelerated maturity, I think that can happen. That's the growing up part. That's a big part of it. Then there's, kind of cognitive perceptual changes. And it also depends on what kind of meditation you do. But just like your perceptual system is different, like when you open your eyes or when you turn your head, like the way the world renders around you as like a virtual world is different, and it becomes more clear and also more dreamlike in some ways. You get to see actually that it's a rendering. It's not, it's not the real thing. It's just kind of you catch more optical illusions, you might say,
Mm,
right? You can
yeah.
see things like,
Yeah, yeah. Totally relate to what you're saying. But if I were to describe it, I'd see it like as a world of temporary thoughts, because your perceptions of the things around you, they're shifted through meditation. And I find they move a lot slower, just in a sense where you're not seeing it as this fast-paced oriented problem solving thing. It's more or less just like a state of flow where everything's sort of just passing by, and then you're experiencing yourself with it, opposed to something that's against it. Because for a lot of people, they're trying to like control what's around them, and that like generates a lot of stress. They're like focused more like on the end result of like where they need to be or what they need to do, opposed to like what's around them. So like when I'm walking around, I'm able to like see the trees in a lot more detailed ways, or see like an animal or a person in a more authentic way.
mhm.
So yeah, that's given me like a lot of insights for sure. I'm not sure if your experience was similar to that.
Yeah, it's funny when you said slower. Initially, I was thinking faster, but
Oh, really?
some things get slower, some things get faster. Like
Hmm.
when you're in the meditative state, or and you're looking out. Let's say you're standing at the side of the lake or the ocean. You're watching the waves. It's like HD. Every wave is if you're in it, you can. It's fast, but it's
Uh,
flowing as well. But the racing mind isn't as fast.
hmm.
Certainly, most of the time, that kind of drivenness where you're totally in the mind and you're missing the whole rest of the world.
Hmm.
Yeah, that slows that, or that can slow down.
Okay.
But there's so many different ways to go about it too. There's really different meditations, and some are
Mhm.
really focused on high speed awareness, which is kind of fun and cool.
Really?
Um, a bit racy. Yeah, if you're like trying to notice everything as fast as possible, just like you know,
Yeah.
every thought, every sensation. It's a racy mind state. Yeah, they all have some commonalities.
Oh, for sure. What is your preferred meditation?
I'm doing a lot of, I guess it's like Vajrayana style, aware of awareness, kind of like there's like a letting go aspect where you just like drop everything, and then you notice that like everything is happening in this open space.
Mhm.
So now I'm trying to drop into it right now because notice my mind got a little racy. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's you could say it's non-dual meditation. So I've been enjoying that. The teacher Michael Taft, who's online. He's got a great online presence. I've learned a ton from him. Been
That's
following
great.
his meditations on that.
You mentioned like letting go, and for some teachers, they describe letting go as ego death. Would you say that's something that's necessary in order for somebody to like really truly let go?
I don't think so. Um, I think ego death, the phenomenon of ego death, happens when there's a strong ego that doesn't want to die. Because other teachers talk about it like we all have enlightened moments throughout the day. We just don't realize.
Mm.
There's moments where between finishing one thought and starting a new thought, or finishing a task and just like you pause for a moment, and it's a legitimate moment of letting go and relaxed openness, little ego grasping in there. So we have those moments. But I think to kind of pay attention to that and deepen that,
Mhm.
that's very mysterious how that happens, like how that happens all the time, yet we miss it. I
Mhm.
don't know what's going on in consciousness. It's very mysterious, but I don't think it has to be a big struggle, a big ego death moment, although there certainly will be moments like that in practice,
Hmm.
because sometimes the ego just flares up, and if we're going to deal with it in practice, like it's gonna, scream and cry. It doesn't have to be that way.
No, no, I totally agree. But it's just interesting to hear because like kind of like a repeated thing that I come across. And leading into that, would you say like it's positive or negative to like have expectations going into a meditation? Like should someone be open-minded and just see where it goes, or should they have avenues to follow?
Hmm. Yeah, another good question. um, One teacher I've heard say, like, people should have more expectation from their meditation.
Ah,
um,
I haven't
and
heard
what
that.
he's saying is that people practice for a long time, and they're just lazy about it, and they think, oh, this is what it does, this is what it
Mhm,
is.
mhm.
So there's something to be said for striving for enlightenment, striving for a breakthrough. We get these opposing teachings because, you know there's times for both. So it's annoying when people take one, maybe it worked for them once, and they think that's the whole thing, that's the only way, and they usually end up stuck. So if
Yeah.
you have the left and the right, turn on your car, you're going to use both at different times.
Mhm, mhm.
um, so yeah, I think there's moments for both, and integrating them. There's, try that for meditation. Can you strive to let go completely?
Yeah, yeah.
See what happens, right?
Oh, for sure. Because then it kind of like indirectly opens things up and it leads you down that path. And I've experienced that in meditation, but much more powerfully in medicine ceremonies, like specifically ayahuasca. It makes you face whatever fears you have in your life and unloads everything so that you can see it for what it is. And they say to set an intention and so forth, and that you should have like some sort of end result that you hope to achieve out of it. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, at least from my experience, like the mind, it flows in whatever direction it chooses at a certain point. And that's a part I think of letting go, is just letting go of the experience to an extent where you just trust your mind enough that it's going to lead you down to the path that's necessary for you to become better.
Right.
Because I think subconsciously we are all like battling something in the back of our minds, and there's like an unanswered question that arises, but the answer, like I think deep enough, it just springs up, and I think that's when those ego death moments kind of happen. That's how I imagined it would happen, where you just sit long enough to allow that experience to unfold, because you're sort of just lowering those layers of suppression and you lower those layers of resistance.
Mhm.
Because my shaman in the ceremony was explaining how the ego can mask itself through love and through whatever feeling you want to choose, which could be also tainted, I
Right.
think, with
I heard this in
meditation.
your
Yeah,
last episode. I listened.
yeah,
Quite interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So that's something that really blew my mind, because I think my ego was playing a part in that. And what is your take on this? Like, do you think that like how could you tell if your ego is masking itself?
Mhm.
Like, how could you tell if you're using meditation to hide
Right.
something?
Yeah. That's a really challenging question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of layers there, but okay. One thing to start is that, like, maybe when we say ego, we should clarify that, like, in this way, especially when the ego hides through love, it's not all bad. Um,
Mm,
Maybe I just use the word sense of self, like conventional self, lowercase s. um, we're going to have a sense of self no matter what, and it should be an effective, loving self, right? That's what you want. You don't want to lose that functionality. That would be a downgrade.
yeah.
um, so okay, we recognize that, but then there's the phenomenon of we're being challenged, we're being asked to grow, we're being asked to respond, and our sense of self is avoiding that.
Mhm.
It doesn't want to go there. And how it avoids it, well, it's going to use whatever strategies it has. And it might look like love, it might look like whatever, it could look like hate. But the way you would notice then is maybe a subtle sense of suffering in yourself and feedback from others. If other people are telling you, dude, whatever, if you're getting that feedback from life itself, that you're
Mhm.
not connected, that you're not responding, and you're just like, but I'm coming from love, right? That's probably a sign that it's the ego. So to be able to actually respond to any life situation, to be kind of fully open to life and not fixate any protection,
Yeah.
because nothing needs to be protected, I guess, right? Like unless someone's trying to hurt you, but like psychologically there's nothing to protect. There's no
Mhm.
one in there that can be hurt, I might say, from this meditative perspective anyways.
Yeah.
Of course people get traumatized, but I don't know, does that make sense? Does that answer the question? It's a good question.
No, no, that was probably on point. I think that definitely opened up some things for me.
And there are people like that. There's lots, actually. Most practitioners are probably somewhere there, uh, and that's okay. But it's just not finished. Like you
Exactly.
can have cool experiences and you can be somewhat enlightened in certain situations, and in other situations, you're not helping the
Yeah.
world. You're protecting yourself still.
Mm.
But I believe that there's a way to be fully, I guess, fully in life, where like any situation you can respond to appropriately, even if it means your own death or whatever. At least I think people get quite close. It's something to strive towards. So
I guess like the next question, I'll try and shift away from meditation because we could probably spend the entire
yeah,
podcast
we'll
talking
probably
about.
come back to it. But
Yeah. At this point, I wanted to ask about, because you were involved in the Brick program, which is essentially a program whereby they take non-recyclable plastic and they put it into plastic bottles around 500 milliliters, and then they use those bottles for building like buildings such as like a school, which we built in Chavin.
we all built it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And that was like huge in towards like expanding awareness about sustainability and also education. My next question for you would be like, what to you does like a sustainable economy or a sustainable, yeah, like education system looks like, in a sense that's going to be long term? Because at the moment, in my opinion, I think meditation should be mandatory in schools and within the government, and programs such as this should also, in a sense, be made mandatory. Do you have anything else you think that should be required?
Yeah, it's tricky. The word mandatory is certainly tricky. Here's the way I think about these things. There's We can imagine lots of different utopias. We can actually, like, we have the technologies to solve our problems, and we can imagine all these different scenarios that would be so much better, right?
Hmm.
Meditation in school, and we to build the things this way and use these energy supplies. But the tricky part actually isn't imagining that. That's pretty easy, and people have been doing that for a long time. The tricky part is actually understanding where we are now and charting a path to one of those scenarios. That actually is very, very difficult, and people have been trying and failing
It's true. Yeah.
largely. Um,
From my
so
experience, though, I found
yeah,
keeping people accountable and just instilling that habit, that's 61 or 66 days, it really helps, I don't know, shift the perspective on things. Like, for example, for me, when I introduced a meditation program to my school, going into it, I had so much resistance, and there's a lot of negative feedback. Most of the teachers weren't doing it. And it was only by putting myself forward and keeping people accountable that it led to results. And those results ended up leading to improved mental health, improved test scores, and so forth. And part of that accountability was through me making it, no, I don't know if mandatory is the right word, but just like,
Available.
yeah, making it available and just pushing people,
Mhm.
just giving them that little bit of extra nudge to ensure that they can see the other side. Because
Yeah.
meditation I would describe as like reading a menu. You can go through all the food, but you can't really explain what it tastes like until someone eats it. And that
Mhm.
takes, in my opinion, about 8 weeks if you want to like actually see results. But
Yeah.
that requires me to be very strict.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is, I can relate because, yeah, just being a teacher, like, 99% of what you're asking your students to do, they don't want to do it. And they're just doing it because they're in this system that's requiring them,
Yeah.
through social forces, their parents
Hmm.
and it certainly bothers me. Like I'm really big on trying to get agency to the students. Um, so I don't push a lot of stuff, or I try to push as little as possible. Um, and I do, we do little meditations, but
Yeah.
probably not as systematic as the program that you had going.
Yeah.
And I think education is one of the best places to actually work for long-term change. Other systems just push back too hard and they're inflexible.
Hmm.
I guess what I was referring to with my first kind of comment was just the whole world system, and how, like,
Hmm.
we can imagine all these utopias, but it's looking at where we are now, and where our leverage points are, it becomes 1,000 times harder.
Hmm.
Um, Education, I think, is one of the big leverage points. We do get to decide what our kids, we do get to brainwash, in effect, students.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
we're creating people, so there's definitely a responsibility there, like, to do that
Yeah.
in the best way you can.
Hmm. Yeah, it's powerful too to see the end results if you do pursue it, because the students listen. At least in Vietnam, they've been fantastic. I'm not sure if it'd be the same in the United States, but
Yeah.
yeah, you mentioned this utopians, like these utopian systems that may solve all our problems. Do you have like a preferred system?
Yeah, there's I could talk about this. So usually when we say systems, we're thinking about top down organization. I guess then there's anarchy, which is like a bottom up kind of system.
Yeah.
um, what's clear now, though, is we need better, just totally, you might say, next level systems, where we need both top down and bottom up. It's going to be, it's not just liberal or conservative or any of that. People get real caught on that stuff.
Hmm.
We need the best ideas from both of those, because they both have valid points. We need, actually, everyone should understand all the arguments on both sides, and then get together and, like, figure out what's better. And you
Yeah.
see, we're just not at that level for the most part. You see that
Mhm.
happening. It's happening now, actually, in, like, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, because
Mhm.
they've stabilized as democracies,
Yeah.
and they're able to now do things like everyone's healthy, and, like, there's therapy, and, like, there's good food, and people don't beat their wives. And now they're like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
let's do meditation in school. And, like, it's every little piece in the system is just
Mhm.
better tuned. So they're kind of the model for, I think, where things can go, but they're just beginning at it, actually. All this thinking comes from something I learned about called metamodernism. There's interesting stuff out there you can read on metamodernism. There's like, if you think of modernist,
Mhm.
which is kind of like technology is awesome. Think like back in the 1950s, where we're like, oh yeah, we're just, us in America, we're the best.
Yeah.
We've got the best technology. We're just headed towards a utopia. We're gonna take over the world because we're the smartest. Like white man's the smartest we've got. We
Mhm.
got science. And
Yeah.
then there was postmodernism, which then said, whoa, 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 everything you're saying is built on a shitty foundation.
Mhm.
And it picked everything apart. And that's kind of where the leading edge of culture is at right now.
Yep.
But the next higher level is a synthesis of both of those.
Mm.
We have to take the best of both, and actually, we do actually have to become the smartest of them all as a global culture. Like we have to solve these problems. It's going to require us to become a new level of human being, a new level of collaboration. So
Oh yeah. It
that's
sounds,
all I know,
yeah.
is that we can't solve today's problems with our old systems. And when people waste all their energy arguing
Mhm.
about these old systems, it's like, come on,
Yeah. It's just like a loop, just because I find for me, like the arguments seem to almost repeat themselves.
Mhm.
And then you can shift whatever evidence you want. Like it's clear that, for instance, the United States is not the best country to I guess formulate a new political system in another country, or like liberate a country per se. And
Right, right.
that was clear through, like, I guess there are certain circumstances where you could say it was positive, like in Korea maybe, but when it comes to like Vietnam, I think they also had their hands in Chile, and it's like
Yeah.
one of, yeah, and it's like,
Even the positive cases, like our version of positive is just accelerated destruction of the planet, right?
yeah,
That's our best case. It's like when America's working well, we just eat the planet. Um, that can't be the end
hmm,
goal, right? We need something even better.
hmm, hmm. Well, it's, I think, very difficult to change because it's sort of like embedded into the culture. Because I went to Seattle recently, and just going to the supermarket, you're just like overflowed with excess. Like you have all these products which are like 10 times bigger than they need to be, or you order something and it's way bigger than you need to be. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so it's pretty overwhelming, because I guess that kind of ties also into their politics. They just need things that are way above and beyond what they're actually
Yeah,
requiring. But I think
yeah,
that
we've
ties into like externalities. They're not factoring that in.
yeah, that's
So
right.
like a resource-based economy is something that I see as maybe the most likely solution, but it's just, I think, too strapped down with ideals and arguments to ever actually happen. Because we do have the
Right.
technology for most things to be automated and for things to operate efficiently, and people don't need to work, but I think the system is what pushes people. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like you said, the history, and people are just used, they're just, I think it's maybe pride oriented. People just gain like a sense of, I wouldn't know how to describe it. Like they gain like an energy by by validating themselves as better than X or Y.
Totally.
And I
The
think, yeah,
tribal.
yeah, it ties into tribalism for sure.
Yeah. If people want to learn more about this, uh, the person who made it really clear to me is Daniel Schmachtenberger, and he's done a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
Um, he talks about how, if we're going to build a utopia, how will we get there?
Yeah.
And he really lays it out. And he does it much better than I can. So definitely people can check that out.
Yeah.
The guy's a hero.
Yeah.
There's something about this situation when it really sets in, that's incredibly energizing.
Hmm.
When you realize how difficult of a problem it is, and
Hmm.
how like it's not like cross my fingers, the Democrats are going to win next year.
Yeah.
It's so much deeper than that. And
Hmm.
there's that level of challenge really can fire you up,
Hmm.
and motivate, like, oh, I have to become a bodhisattva to help you save the world. Like, that's what's called for. I can't just like do a decent job. Like, I
Yeah.
have to be absolutely the best I can be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the positive side of kind of contemplating these problems
Hmm.
deeply.
Yeah. Like you have that practice of meditation, and uh, you can easily just delve into that world and just forget about the world outside. So when it comes to like monkhood, there's some monks who dedicate themselves fully to that practice. And I get what is holding you back from doing that?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. I heard you talking about this on your last podcast.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I would say I can't hold myself back. Um, I think it really depends on your setup. So like these monks who disappear and can really just disappear for the rest of their lives in a cave, they're actually trying to deal with a problem. The
Mm,
problem is so severe, it's that they're trapped in, um, the wheel of rebirth, and this is their only shot. And if they don't complete the enlightenment in this lifetime, they're going to be reborn as an animal, a million times more, and before they get this chance again,
yeah.
right? So that sounds like a really intense problem, right? And that's what drives someone to practice in that way. Um, but actually, not a lot of people practice in that way. Most people are still pretty connected to life. So I'm taking a different kind of problem as my kind of practice driver. It's not the wheel of rebirth. I don't know about rebirth. It's a mystery. My problem is this, this situation, this world.
Mm,
And that also can drive a powerful practice, but just in a different way. There's no impulse to disappear for long periods of time.
mhm.
Even to disappear would be to, disappear into nature and become, merge with the birds and the trees. And
Yeah.
in a way, that's not disappearing, that's connecting to the living earth, right?
Mhm.
Probably more connected than we are right now. So yeah, that's the way I'd frame it. And the people who inspire me, my teachers, are a lot of them are monastics, but they're also, and some of them aren't, but
Mm.
they are committed to, the bodhisattva path, which is service in the world.
Totally.
And I
Yeah.
think people who try to disappear, they usually run into this issue of like they're trying to escape their own mind, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I very rarely hear of people like who got away forever.
Mhm.
It's usually a phase.
It's true. Yeah. And you could consider it, I guess, in a sense, like a form of escapism, because
Right.
I think the real world is the ultimate test towards your enlightenment.
Yeah. They're really, yeah, to me, I just, that's not my inclination. And I think for most people nowadays, the way we've grown up and the way we've lived, like we don't want to disappear. Like we want to feel good and feel relief and feel purpose, and then feel connected to other human beings.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the kind of I want to get away and be a monk thing is just based on, I don't know. It's just another idea for
Mhm.
how I'm going to make myself feel better.
Mhm. And how would you describe your purpose?
Hmm, yeah, purpose.
Or your life philosophy?
Yeah, I like purpose better actually. Well, my purpose is I'm trying to find it. I'm trying to. Uh, I know I'm not fully there yet. But I have a little altar over here where I meditate, and there's a little thing written down that I chant sometimes from one of my teachers. And the first line is, how can I give my life completely to great love for the benefit of all beings? It's kind of, you give it and it's gone, and the universe just lives you.
Mhm.
um, and that seems to be we can take steps towards that, and it seems to be a really loving and compassionate thing. Like that's what flows through when you stop obstructing.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I love that too. I use a mantra similar to that, and it ties into the concept of nothingness. Like I am nothing, but then I am also
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
yeah.
And the more you say it, it's like the more connected that I become to the people and the things around me.
I don't know if that's from the same teacher, but a friend of mine read this poem and said something like, I am nothing, I can be anyone. And it's just like it can pop up anywhere. It can,
Mhm.
the Buddha nature, or whatever you want to call it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, because then you stop. For me, I stopped seeing things working against me, and I stopped trying to control the situation. Then, as a result, I can see the fact that everyone, at least for me, or I can feel the fact that everyone is experiencing what's around them differently.
Mhm.
So then that allows me to like detach and be more of an observer, which is beautiful because then it allows me to be more authentic and then not get tied in emotionally with what's going on. Yeah, this has been great. Like I've been taking notes as well on things
Mm.
like metamodernism, and I'm definitely going to check out that Daniel
Schmachtenberger. Yeah.
Schmachtenberger, that's what it is. Yeah. He sounds like an interesting guy.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah. Is he similar to like, because there's the Zeitgeist movement for a while. I'm not sure if you're like aware of that. Because when like they're talking about the one percenters and stuff, and was it similar to that in a sense?
Might be. I think, to me, Daniel Schmachtenberger, he's someone who takes someone who like would have been like super creative, innovative, Steve Jobs type character, like someone who's just super smart and sees things. And then also like, have them be somewhat enlightened at the same time.
Wow.
Um, basically, when people can like see the world clearly,
Hmm.
because a lot of people get good ideas, right? They
Yeah.
get it. They might not even be good ideas. They're just interesting ideas, and those ideas build around them, but they're not actually connected to the real world. They're just ideas. This is 99% of what's out there.
Hmm.
And then there's people who actually can see what's happening and in multiple areas, and they actually build up a knowledge base of the whole world, and they have good sense making.
Yeah.
And if you also turn that around and do that to your sense of self, we call that enlightenment. That to me is really cool. I just, maybe it's not the pinnacle of a human being. Maybe that's a really kind of
Hmm.
Western centric perspective of mine, but that's something I kind of aspire to. It's just like, oh, this person is extremely conceptually clear and really hooked up to what's real, and they have some self realization, some inner insight. When you have all those ingredients, you just, you can do stuff in the world, and you actually can be effective. Unfortunately, it's still quite rare to find people like that.
It is, yeah. Because like with those type of people, I find, at least based in the past, they've trended down towards using that power to start a cult or whatever it may be that works for them. So it's really beautiful and so nice to hear that somebody actually is following through on that.
Yeah, I like the good cults. We do need to start new cults,
Yeah,
because the world we grew up in is a giant cult,
technically,
right?
yeah, it's true.
Like, when I realized this was when I was like, why have I been eating animals my whole life? Like, I love
Hmm.
animals, Like, why does everyone think this is okay? We're torturing these little children.
Yeah.
Um, that's cult behavior. And
Mhm.
everyone just thinks it's okay because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that
Mhm.
doesn't mean, that's just one little thing. Like there's lots of other things that I probably haven't deprogrammed,
Yeah.
and I couldn't because we still live in the cult at large, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, cults can be good, right? We need other systems of people living in very different ways.
Mhm. But I think it's gradually changing because if you think of like 50 years ago, I guess you could say the cult was oriented around sexism and like a male dominant culture. Whereas now it's way more female oriented than ever
You're
before.
right.
Like,
Yeah. So this is the postmodernism, because postmodernism is a critical movement. It critiqued all these things and said, no, like men, you're bad, and meat eaters, you're bad, and this and that. And it just tore everything down, which is
mm,
super useful. But it never actually built something new. At least that's the meta modern turn, is like, okay, let's build a new cult. Let's
mm,
actually build, let's turn off our criticality, or at least turn it down and turn up our creativity, and like take a risk, and let's start a new community, and let's live in a different way
mhm.
using all the lessons we've learned.
Because yeah, I guess you could say in a sense we've achieved this ultimate state of equality and that people are living their best lives right now. But then on the contrary, mental health is at its worst, right? And that doesn't really make sense. Technically, we should be the happiest we've ever been, but people are locked in comparison. They're more upset than ever. So
Yeah,
I guess that raises the question of like whether or not the way we're progressing is actually progress.
right. Yeah, I mean, in some ways it is, but in other ways it's
Hmm.
certainly, it's a dead end. It's
Yeah,
like, this
yeah.
this is as far, this is as good as this gets. It's
Hmm.
already getting worse, actually.
Yeah.
Probably cross that point.
Yeah. Because we seem to be selective on like the issues that we choose to highlight, but then you have to also question whether or not those issues are really something that we should be centralizing all our attention towards. Like, yes,
Yeah,
I believe LGBTQ is like really important. Gay marriage is important. Women's rights is important. But man, if I had to break it down, I'd say the drug war is something we should really be focusing on. Like these
yeah.
issues
And
are
those,
important, but like they seem to be like kind of distracting from what like the core progressive change that needs to be happening, or like environmentalism or like meditation.
it's difficult because we can only really see the issues that directly impact us.
Yeah.
Um, you know, if you're, a gay kid who's thrown out of his house, and like your friends are dying of HIV, like that's it. That's all you know. And like it's the end of your world, basically.
Mhm.
So we need a system that, instead of like picking one issue at a time and turning it into a war, like
That's
can
true. Yeah.
solve multiple issues simultaneously and naturally.
Mm.
Um, and it's possible. Like we see that kind of intelligence in nature, in our bodies. That's what our bodies are doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's very different from what we're doing now. And I think we have to educate everyone. That's kind of the foundation.
That seems to be like the pinnacle towards like everything. It's education, you know?
Yeah, education plus psychological healing as a part of that, so no one has
Sure.
trauma that's keeping them locked up, and then we can actually do amazing stuff, right? You see it
Good.
happen.
Yeah. I think Portugal is a great example of that, how like they basically outletted all their funding, which they previously used to combat drug addiction, and they put it towards therapy and actually helping people. And of course, their crime and everything went down.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And then also, I'm pretty sure you're the one that mentioned to me about Mozambique and how they,
Maybe, I don't think so.
okay. Well,
I don't
you're
know
probably well
anything
aware of
about
it. Like,
Mozambique. What happens in Mozambique? I don't know.
Well, they in 2001, their president made meditation mandatory within the military and government.
Mm,
And who's to say whether or not this is tied to it, but their economy tripled past expectations, their crime rates halved, their mental health issues halved, like everything good for society followed through
mhm.
as a result of that. And that's why I brought up the idea of making it mandatory, is because humans,
Yeah,
they are like they are deserving in every right towards their freedoms, but at the end of the day, if they can't process emotions and deal and deal with what's going on inside, then that's going to be reflected outside. And I think meditation is a huge practice towards that.
yeah. In my kind of utopic scenario, there's, let's say, community centers in every neighborhood where there's meditation classes multiple nights a week, and there's therapists you can talk to, and
Yeah.
they have brain science with, all the psychedelic medicine that has actually been figured out by medical science, how to best use it.
Yeah.
And everyone would be going, and like people would be coming back better, and they'd be like, dude, you gotta go. Like, we wouldn't even need to make it
True.
mandatory,
Yeah.
because if we actually can figure out how to do it, like if we were getting people to real healing
Yeah.
consistently, everyone would do it. So this is there's a couple of different people who are trying to medicalize psychedelics and meditation together, and it's already a thing, as you know, but it's still in super early stage. I think it's not crazy though that if in 100 years we might be like, oh yeah, like we know how to medically accelerate enlightenment by neurostimulation and this and that, and with the right therapy,
Yeah.
and we're going to give it to everyone because it just makes the world better. So we could get there. And so I see things like making it mandatory, like it might be appropriate in some scenarios, just like authoritarianism in governments is sometimes appropriate. Like here in Vietnam, the government just locked us down hard.
Yeah.
Probably a good call, but like that doesn't work everywhere. Sometimes it's just not appropriate.
Yeah. I can relate to that in a lot of ways, because if people don't feel the need to do it, then it's just going to make the experience worse, because whatever's going on in their minds is going to be inflated. And I guess you could say the same for beginner meditators. If they got serious issues closing their eyes, which I know for some people is very difficult, can just put them in like a world of terror.
Right. And hopefully these are things that science will eventually understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're kind of operating on the assumption that it's meditation's not magic. It's like it's something in the brain that
Hmm.
we can do brain training. And so
Hmm.
I am excited about that kind of area of exploration. But we need to not have our society collapse. We need 25 more years at least for that project. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Because I
good
think we're at
luck.
a point now where we're just trying to like feed people, feed and house people. I think that's what a priority is for a majority of countries. And
The
then,
scary,
yeah.
yeah, refugees, climate refugees, food shortages leading to warfare.
Hmm.
That's the scary scenario, right? Global supply chains shut down, the internet's down, mass starvation. Uh, it's
Yeah.
a possibility. Um,
Yeah.
so we need to not do that.
Well, I think coronavirus was kind of like a good example of just the fact that countries, when it comes down to it, will come together. And I'm not sure how forthright they've been with like their aid and stuff, but it seems as though they're working together in a way that's trying to ensure that everyone is benefiting, or like at least coming out of this scenario, like by donating vaccines or by providing aid. Because I'm not sure how big it is in Vietnam, but from what I've read, the United States has been giving them lots of food and has also been providing vaccines. Japan has also played a big part too. Now, when it comes to like the climate crisis, who knows whether or not countries will stand up? But I think, when it comes to their decisions to, for instance, like universal basic income and stuff, eventually I think it'll lead down that path. Like they will have to in some way or another like help those millions of starving people sitting at their doorstep, and they're gonna have to like make a call.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm pretty
I like to
positive.
hope so. I mean,
Yeah,
right now, like there's millions of starving people in America, and our government, hasn't been able to deal with that effectively. Um,
yeah, but I think
there's a
it's
lot of hope, though. There's
trending
reason
down the
for hope.
path because like I think people are becoming a lot more educated in the realm of psychedelics and um altruism and stuff. Like a lot of people that I speak to here, they're Americans and they focus more on the capitalist mindset, but they do have that altruistic aspect towards their life.
Yeah, totally. People can be totally altruistic and sincerely believe that capitalism is the way to solve problems.
Yeah, yeah.
And for some it's got benefits for sure, but yeah, we probably need
Mhm.
to upgrade capitalism substantially.
Yeah, exactly. Reboot it. And I remember I think the last time we talked, you were talking about how Adam Smith, in his book, he initially described capitalism as like I guess a starting point or like uh the invisible hand, like a push towards moving toward it, like in a direction that's more industrialized and more progressive. But once achieved at a certain level, it's not necessary.
Hmm. I don't remember if I said that, but that sounds, because I've never really read the Adam Smith. Uh, I know that there's a lot of misconceptions. Like people took these thinkers, the invisible hand, these ideas of these early Americans, and they totally perverted them.
Yeah.
Like these guys weren't idealists or ideologues. Like they were really practical and could see multiple sides of the issue. And we've just totally turned it into sports teams.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
anyone who's really educated on these things, I don't care if they're, super conservative, like they've got a point of view and something important to say. And so that's what I just appreciate is people who are willing to think deeply and change their mind as well. And
Definitely.
that's what I try to cultivate in my students. I'll tell you the setup I'm giving my students here. So, and why I'm not teaching them intensive meditation just yet. So I'm trying to give them the cognitive, the conceptual thinking skills to like actually get a good sense for the world.
Yeah.
And when they do, and then there has to be also the heart, the spirit. Um, and then there's a hint of mindfulness in there too. There's just little nuggets. When they do, they're going to be so distraught and so just, it's terrible. I've been through it. You've been through it. It's like, what, this is the world I'm born into. Um, and if you can really deeply realize that, then you can make the turn where you say, and now I'm going to devote the rest of my life to like making this better.
Mhm.
So I'm just trying to give them the setup, and I know I could do much better too. I'm still learning how to be a good teacher, but I'm setting them up for that existential crisis. And
Mhm.
then maybe then they'll remember a little bit of Zen stuff and go find a Zen master, whatever. Yeah, that's actually the other thing I'm really passionate about, and I want more of is monastic training system for like people in the world. We've talked about before, I think, the monastic academy, and I draw a lot of inspiration from them and their mission. Places that aren't dogmatically religious, but actually kind of understand what's going on in the world and have the highest level of meditation tech.
Yeah.
Um, they're not dogmatic about it. They can actually get people real breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Like everyone needs that at some point in their life to take a year off and go train.
When I decided to take the year off, I had a lot of friends questioning me and frightened, terrified actually, as to what I was going to do, where I was going to go, what my plan was. And for me, there was not really much stress behind it because going into it, I knew it was going to be oriented solely around self development and the fact that I trusted myself. I think also helped me build up the confidence to go in with it with no stress. And I think their stress was oriented around the fact that they couldn't see their life outside of the world that they
Mm,
created, the world of work, the world of a routine. Like that's the biggest one, routine. Like people don't trust themselves outside of routine.
mm,
And yeah, that's given me so much opportunity to progress, at least just within the past 2 months, because it's just like living alone here in Mexico has just allowed me to deal with a lot of emotions and challenge myself in ways like I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, but the fact that I'm still putting myself in scenarios that are challenging me to think differently, like for instance, I'm taking singing classes, I'm taking dancing classes,
nice.
I'm like doing everything outside of my boundaries because like you said, like our brains are sort of oriented around this core idea of like comfort, and like we sort of trained ourselves to see the world in a certain way. And yeah, I think by just dipping our hands in areas that 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 don't feel right, they may actually be contradicted in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. Like who knows, like I probably am not going to be a singer, but the fact that I'm doing it is putting me in a place where I think it's allowing me to develop those aspects in my brain and become overall like a more well-rounded person that understands myself. Um, and the concept of monastic societies, like I think, are important as well. And it's something I would like to do at some point, but for a full year, it seems a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, the way you're putting yourself out there, and I
Yeah,
would like to think of it in brain terms as well. Just like got to challenge the brain, keep
yeah,
shaking it up.
yeah. Because I think it just it leads you to new connections with people with different perspectives. Because like a dancer's perspective is totally different from a meditator's. It's much more
Right.
active. It's crazy, but there's so much joy, and it can really help me understand like the the effectiveness of dance and movement just as much as meditation.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's something to be said for even doing that within meditation. It's like
Mm,
meditating in a way that you didn't think you could or you didn't think was a good idea. Just like basically just pushing the brain in different directions. Like you push out a bit over here and then over here, and you're just kind of making space. And
yeah,
that's what the psychedelics do, right? It's just like you're floored with totally new experiences and new boundaries that you didn't even know were there being shattered.
yeah, yeah. Because whenever I think of whenever I'm caught in thought or something, I always have the mantra from Tony Robbins, a bit cliche, but he says emotion is driven through motion.
Mm,
So like if you're not moving, then you're most likely going to be absorbed in thought.
yeah, there's a lot of value there.
Yeah, yeah. So I know like Thich Nhat Hanh is like one of your favorites. Do you have any
That's
other
right.
do you have any other spiritual talkers or any books that you'd recommend, or any?
Um, yeah, I guess I could give my favorites, my sources of inspiration. Thich Nhat Hanh's definitely up there, and that's a certain kind of practice, a certain kind of monasticism, which is really beautiful, but also doesn't. They're super serious. They're the monks and nuns, like they give their lives up to a level that's you know very deep, into the sangha. So that's quite different from like the monastic academy. The head teacher there, Soryu for all, is a real big inspiration to me. He's not very well known at all,
Mm,
but it feels like it's coming from our generation and our culture. So like it takes time to get Buddhas in your own culture. Like Buddhism,
mm,
when Buddhism moves to a new culture, it traditionally it takes 500 years to like establish itself, because you need people to train in the old way and like become enlightened and then understand your culture, and then kind of adapt it. So Soryu he's not even very old. He's probably in his 40s. And there's something about his teaching that's really, really resonant for me.
Hmm.
And it's very much like you got to save the world. Like you got to become a hero and you have to do the impossible. So I appreciate that. And then there's also Shinzen Young. Did you ever read Shinzen or watch his videos?
Shenzhen Yang. Is he, yeah, I think, is he a Tibetan monk?
No, he's actually an American guy, but he trained in all over actually, and he's very scientific and technical. He's actually now working in a science lab. There's a cool video that just got released. They're working on an ultrasound brain stimulation device to shut down the default mode network, shut down the kind of wandering self-referential thoughts. It's ultrasound like when a mother has a baby and they use the ultrasound to like see what sex the baby is. So I
Yeah.
guess you can use focused ultrasound to just by putting it like here, and you can target deep brain regions
What?
and you can just knock out. So
Jeez.
Shinzen says, and in the ultrasound, they're not doing that. It's very targeted.
Yeah.
Shinzen says this technology is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying, but the path the world is on is more terrifying.
Hmm.
So I mean, they're testing it. It's not like a capitalist project. This is in the science labs. And I guess so far it's working. So they're able to basically
Really?
boost people's meditation experiences and give them deep experiences relatively quickly in order to motivate them. And kind of show like, hey, this is what it's like this is what it feels like to really let go and feel a deep relief. Okay, now you get to practice and you can come back and do it again next month. So it's just accelerating
Yeah.
the meditative growth curve, but it's still early stage technology.
It makes me
um,
worry though that, like, because it's a tool, right? At the end of the day.
mhm,
And it can, I think, easily just be something that somebody would become dependent on, like sleeping pills or something, where they're just looking for
mhm.
the immediate relief opposed to the practice towards reaching that. Because a part of the relief, I think, is obtained through the struggle.
Right.
It's this resilience, right? You're building up parts of your brain that are understanding and accepting certain thoughts that are overwhelming. And then over time, it just makes you, yeah, mentally tougher.
So these are, I mean, you have to balance the arguments though. Like, should we give people any relief at all, or is all struggle good? Should we torture people because struggle is good? So these are philosophical questions about
It's true. Well, I
what's
don't
the
know. I
best
just
way.
recently read the book Tribe, and
Mhm.
I talked about it in my last podcast. And he was basically highlighting how, like, a lot of veterans these days, they know how to die for their country, but they don't know how to live for it. And I think that ties into the fact that, you know, people these days, they don't have that drive to improve themselves. Everything sort of is about others. And yeah, like you can give someone relief and stuff, but I think tying into that, you also need to, like, you need to train them to understand the purpose of it. And
Right.
because the relief is great, I totally get that. But then it's like, I guess from my mind, it's similar towards giving someone an antidepressant pill and saying, like, okay, here's your relief so you don't commit suicide. But let's
Mhm.
forget about all the issues that are causing this in the first place, which is like a lack of community, a lack of like, I guess, like lack of acceptance towards your issues, and a lack of forgiveness, a lack of compassion.
Yep. No, these are good arguments.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I mean, we're going to have this technology, so we have to find out what is the appropriate way to use it.
Yeah.
Luckily, science can do that. Um, Science is getting better at working with healthy minds and making minds healthy.
I'd be curious though as to whether or not empathy would arise as a result of it, because that's a big side effect of meditation. Like if somebody
Hmm.
is going into it with a lot of rage and anger, whether or not their brain will totally rewire and they'll become like an empathetic person afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's not complete. It's like, I think it might just be a small boost. But hey, if you, let's say you could do, let's say total enlightenment is a 50-year path, 50 years of mind training. If you could cut that in half, well, that makes a big difference. It's still 25 years of mind training, tens of thousands of hours,
Yeah.
right? But if you could just remove some of the earliest blocks more quickly, that would be good. That's a best case scenario for this technology. The
Yeah.
worst case is like it's addictive and destructive. I think we've already got stuff that's like that. We've got cocaine and, internet porn and heroin and stuff that's way worse. So
True.
I think, and people can come through that stuff and still learn good lessons, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Would you do it?
The brain stimulation, yeah, probably.
I
Um,
would do it. I'd be
they,
interested.
they say it works, and Shinzen tested it on himself, and he's like 80 years old. He's a meditation master, and he did it, with no technology, of course, but now he's getting into this, so he's kind of their lead consultant on this project, because you need someone who's super experienced to say, like, is this actually working, or is this targeting something, the wrong place in the brain? And apparently he's able to wear it and say, no, that's the spot, you know.
Well, that's good that there's like actually somebody who's experienced in this that can attest to it.
Mhm.
That'd be cool if they got like all the enlightened people to come together and test it.
Right.
That'd be
Yep. Soon we'll be testing people's enlightenment and put you in the scanner and say, you're
Yeah,
actually you're
there'll
actually
be an
not
app
very
for
good.
that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could you could measure your level and it's like a battery.
Put it on your resume.
Oh, oh, that's beautiful. Mm, all right. Well,
Yeah, maybe
great.
that's a good place to
Yeah.
wrap it for now. This has been good.
Yeah, this is great. I enjoyed this a lot.
End on a positive note.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate your time, Chase, so much. And thank you for sharing and thank you for being you and keep doing what you do.
Wonderful, David. Likewise, this is really, really great. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, yeah.